Hello, I'm David Spicer. I'm your instructor for the Jail Standards course. In this block of instruction, we're going to talk about report writing. I've said before in class that it is very important to document everything that goes on in a jail. There are jail standards on things that must be kept in writing, reports that must be done. All of them are important for several reasons. They're going to be important when later a question arises about something, that you can go back and see what happened, the actions that were taken, who did what, where, when, how, all those things. They may be needed for court. They may be needed for a lawsuit that has been filed and you have to testify on that, or it may be a criminal matter. Sometimes our memory is not as good as we expect it to be, and having something written down will help remind us of incidents. It may be days, weeks, or even years before we have to refer back to it. So it's important to document things in the jail. On incident report forms, the first thing you're going to want to do is fill in the blanks on the portions before you write your narrative. Your narrative is basically going to be telling the story of what happened. But most departments will have a report form and an incident report. There may be other types of forms also. But first of all, always fill in the blanks on the form before you write your narrative. Again, the purpose of your narrative is to detail the events of the incident and what happened. It's to make a permanent record of the incident. Again, it may be a couple of years after the incident before something comes up that someone needs to know, and it's best to write it when it's fresh on your mind, and then you'll have it available to use later. The purpose of the narrative is also to inform superiors of an incident and what happened. And it's also to supply information to investigators that they might need to begin an investigation. Something I've always said to people about the narrative is when someone gets done reading your narrative, they should be able to know exactly what happened, who was involved, what happened, where it happened, how it happened, and read the story so they have a full understanding of what happened, the best that you can. Again, the purpose of the narrative is to help make a record of any injuries that may have occurred to inmates or fellow staff members or yourself. Again, the narrative and reports are also going to be used information that might help establish new policies, procedures, or change those so the incident that occurred may not happen again, hopefully. Some elements of your narrative: it should be clear. It should not be confusing to anyone. Once they read it, they should realize the point is very clear. Keep it simple, but keep it clear where somebody can understand what you're saying. It could be concise, be as accurate as possible. It should be complete, include everything. We talked about courtroom testimony, and something that can happen in courtroom testimony is you're asked a question, you answer it, the attorneys refer to your narrative or your report. It's not in the report. I'm not saying you may have lied or made it up, but they're going to say something like this: well, if it was so important at the time, why did you not put it in your report? And that's a good argument. A jury's going to have a hard time, or a judge is going to have a hard time overcoming that. Make sure your narrative is complete with all the details, and again, make sure it's correct. Make sure what you're putting in there is correct. If you write one narrative and someone else writes another narrative, it begins a conflict in the two narratives that will come into question later. Your steps in writing. The first thing you should do is gather all your information. Whatever that may be. Ask about the incident, leave the investigation to an authorized officer. You just gather the facts to provide to others. Complete the form. If photos are needed of the incident, take them. Complete the fill in the blanks portion before the narrative again. And again, make sure you refer to your policy procedures of your department. Make sure that you are following their policies and procedures, using the forms they want you to form, and the steps they want you to do, how photos are taken, how they're stored, things like that. When you get ready to write your report, make sure you have all your information there ready to write from, whether it's printouts on the inmate's file that you might need, anything else. Things should be done chronological. Start from the beginning. Don't bounce around. Again, clearly identify the individuals involved. I've seen officers write reports where they would use badge numbers. When someone else reads that, they're not going to understand that. You should say inmate and their last name, or officer and their last name, things like that. You should type or print your report. Some people do not have neat handwriting. I am one of those. So therefore, you should either print clearly if you have to handwrite it, or type it. I like typing. It makes it a lot better. Also, Microsoft Word, if you can type a report in it, it can do your grammar, check your spelling, punctuation, things like that to help you with that as well. Once you then write your narrative, the last thing you should write is your narrative, telling your story, again, chronological order. Then review the report. I would even argue, ask somebody to look over it, see if they see any misspellings, words that you shouldn't use, and things like that. And then once it's complete, submit your report. Some places will have a policy and procedure where someone will review your report for you, return it to you for anything they think that might be errors as far as punctuation, spelling, wording. They may see something they think, are you sure about this? And let you double check your information before you officially submit the report. The basic questions that should be answered in the narrative and in the report is who. In other words, who's involved in this incident? The names of everyone involved, witnesses, those who are involved in the incident itself, or who may have seen it. What happened? What was involved? And also when. What time was it? I would say in time that you should always say at approximately, and then the time. So at approximately 2 p.m., but you should have a time in there. Where did it happen? Again, be concise and complete. Don't just say in the jail. Where did this happen in the jail? Cell number, an area, booking room, whatever it is. Make sure the location is identified in the narrative. Why did it happen? Sometimes we're not going to know why. But if you do know why, you can put what you know about that in there. And then how it happened. You might say, inmate so-and-so struck inmate so-and-so. How did they strike them? Inmate so-and-so took their right fist and struck inmate so-and-so in the face. Something like that. But be as concise and complete as you can on answering all of these questions. Use the active voice. It's easier to read an account written in the active voice. Always choose a concrete word over an abstract word. Use a few simple words. Do not overcomplicate your narrative. Keep it simple. Don't try to use big fancy words. And especially never use a word when you don't know its meaning. Do not try to impress others with your writing. Keep it simple. Words that everyone can easily identify and know. The punctuation you're going to use in a report form is going to be primarily a period. You're going to write simple, short sentences punctuated by a period. You're usually not asking a question in a narrative. Shouldn't be done. I used to see an officer who would actually write his reports, and when he would state in his report that he asked somebody a question, he would end that sentence with a question mark. It wasn't properly used. If you're using something besides a period, question what you've just written and clarify that. Make sure somebody knows. And if you decide to use other punctuation mark, make sure you know how to use it. Alright, this concludes this block of instructional report writing. I will post a quiz on this in a few days, and possibly in class we're actually going to do a practical on this presentation. Thank you.